Should be able to refresh. And it should be showing up shortly. Live now, it says. Yeah, it's working. Should be able to refresh. Okay, so let me mute. Is there a way that I'm going to mute sound. Okay.
Should I mute myself?
I see you now.
Should I mute myself? We don't get feedback.
Yeah, you can mute. All right, actually. So everybody online, we're going to get started here shortly. Your moderator is going to grab a pizza first, and actually what I'll do is I'll introduce Matt, and then I'll grab my pizza. So welcome everybody to what we hope to be a really interactive participatory TWed tonight. Matt Klawonn is going to be taking us through an introduction to OpenModeller and then hands-on immersive session. For some of us, it's going to be more immersive than others. Hopefully, you had the chance to install the software ahead of time, or I think there's going to be a little installation time if they can do it quickly.
Yeah.
but if if you're not able to, don't worry about it, and just pay attention to what's going on. No, I think I'll leave it at that. Just remember that we are recording this. We are streaming this via Google Hangouts on air, as is our new practice. We're still trying to work out the bugs. If someone wants to volunteer using their machine as a as a camera machine, that would personally help me so that I could play while I'm watching Matt. I can't record video of Matt talking and have Matt screenshot and doing that sort of thing. So if anybody wants to do that, they can join the join the Hangout, just if you should contact me via Skype, and we can set that up. But without further ado, yeah, whatever. No, you can do it. You can do it, Stan. Just make sure you got your audio.
Oh yeah.
There.
Okay. So I'm going to be going in and out of presentation mode just to show terminal. But thanks everybody for coming. Today's talk will be about an open source tool called OpenModeller. And we're going to go through an example of using this tool for ecological niche modeling. So here's a little overview. We're going to do an example of some ecological niche modeling. I'll give some overview as to what that is, and then we're going to jump right into using OpenModeller. And then I'll give a brief overview of some GIS tools that we can use to visualize our output and make it look nice. And then I'll go over some tips and techniques to use the output from OpenModeller in a program that you might want to write. So first, what is ecological niche modeling? Basically, you're trying to predict habitable zones for given species in some geographic space. For your input, you have spatial data, and as you can see in number 2 here, you're going to have several what we call layers that you're inputting to this tool or to any ecological niche model. The different layers here might represent different measurements for a given geographic region. So you might have temperature measurements, you might have precipitation measurements, you might have topographic measurements, vegetation index, that sort of thing, for a given geospatial region. And you decide what those layers are, so there's no requirement for exactly what you have to put in. But you should always use some kind of domain knowledge when you're determining these layers, because you don't want to add noise to your model by putting in data that might be irrelevant. In general, for ecological niche modeling, there are 2 different approaches you can take. You can take a correlative or a mechanistic approach. Correlative requires you to define where the species that you're trying to model currently live within this geographic region that you have in 1 or 2. And then basically what it'll do, it'll say, all right, the current species lives here, and it tries to find commonalities in the regions that the species live in with other regions in the geographic region that you present based on the layers that you give it. Whereas a mechanistic approach might use some outside knowledge. It might use some domain knowledge, some biological knowledge, and it'll say, okay, I'm starting out with this set of assumptions that a species can only live within these constraints, and then I'm going to go from there. Today we'll be using a correlative approach. That's what OpenModeller, the majority of the algorithms that it has are. So there are different algorithm types for a correlative model. There are profiling methods, regression techniques, and also machine learning techniques. Each of these different types of approaches, and we'll dive right into a few of these later on. Basically, their output is going to be a set of the points that lie within the geographic region, and then it assigns probabilities to those points. And the probability is indicative of how the model expects the species to be distributed, potentially, not necessarily a guarantee, but it pinpoints places that the species is more likely to live or less likely to live. So over here, we see the output. Here is a map of the region that we're analyzing, and the areas of red indicate high probability that the species could survive or indeed thrive in those areas, and then other places that have the blue, that means the species is not likely going to be able to live there. So OpenModeller is a tool for performing ecological niche modeling. It's an open source framework. It has, when I counted, 17 different algorithms that you can run on the layers that you give it, and it will output different probabilities. And you can contribute your own to the model. It also has C++ and Python APIs. And there are a number of command line and at least one desktop tool that you can use. One of the nice things is that so you don't have to have exactly overlapping regions for your layers. It will automatically find the areas that contain the data for all of your layers and use those to compute your model. So this is a hand from SpongeBob if anybody gets the reference, but we're gonna dive right into getting hands-on with it. So you have to follow along and participate in the next steps. You're gonna at least have to have some sort of OpenModeller version installed. So did everybody get at least something going, or run into any roadblocks that we can try to resolve right now? Is that a yes?
Yes, Professor.
All right, awesome. So everybody has at least the binary installed or installed from source. One way to check to make sure that you're running is if you have a terminal open. If you can type the command om_console, and it gives you some sort of usage instructions, then that means that it should be working. So everybody can do something like that. I'll take silence as a yes.
Yes.
Awesome. Cool. That was much smoother than I expected it to be, because it took me a while. I guess none of you are running a Linux distro because, or a Debian-based distro, because there's this weird little sort of hack that you have to do to actually get it to work, because it's only available through the RPM software package manager, and building from source on Linux, you run into some problems. Or on Debian, you run into some problems.
How many people are running Linux?
Doesn't look like anybody. Us.
It's not a hack, that's just part of the process to just make sure the path is set up.
Right. But it doesn't, the fact that it doesn't do
The
that out of the
installer doesn't
box,
do that automatically.
right, it makes it seem a little bit like a hack. So for our example case, we're going to examine the species Furcata boliviana, which is a small bird that lives in Bolivia, South America. So we're going to use data that's available from this link, and I don't know if there's a better way to share this link, maybe through the Hangout or something like that, that I can get people to...
Yes. Actually, you could, in the chat of the Hangout, you can paste...
Right. So I'll go ahead and paste this in the Hangout, and then you can copy it, and we'll go there, and I'll show you which files to download.
There it is.
There it is. So I'll go ahead and follow it. Somebody stop me if I'm going too fast. But it brings you to this SourceForge directory. And the files that we need to download are this request.txt, raincoolest.tiff, tempaverage.tiff, and
one at a time. So request.txt.
Yeah, I'll bring this up because it has the list here.
Yeah, if you keep that, and then
yeah,
anybody who's downloading can just.
So TIF is an image format?
Correct. So
is it like raw data, or is it like compressed or something like that?
So I think even though it has this TIFF extension, it's a format called GeoTIFF.
Oh, okay. So it's not the same.
It's not exactly the same as a.
It might have.
I don't think you could.
Payload or something.
Right. Yeah, I don't think you could just load this into an image viewer and get the result.
I get it.
I haven't tried it actually.
I mean,
It'd be
GIF
interesting
has
to try.
actually. GIF has. So the other one. So it's rain coolest.
So I'll go briefly over what each of these files are. So this request.txt is basically something that you feed to the program, and it specifies different parameters for the algorithm that you're going to run and where to find the other data. This Frittata boliviana is what's called an occurrences file. So it will contain all of the points that the species is currently found at. And then the two TIFF files are basically the layers that you're going to feed in. So it's some latitude and longitude associated with a value. So in this case, it's going to be some precipitation value and then temperature average for that given point. And I think that's in this example for the entire year, the average temperature for the year. But again, it's important to have some sort of domain knowledge when you're picking layers that you're going to feed into this model, because if you don't know, for example, what these two represent, then you're going to get results that are not that you can't validate easily, because you don't know, garbage in, garbage out, you don't know where it came from. So did everybody get those files downloaded? Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to go on to the next slide, and then I might bring up the terminal. So we're going to use the omconsole command, and like I said, it takes this request file, request.txt, and it has all of these nice settings that you can elaborate in the file. One thing that I didn't mention is that you also have to specify what spatial reference system you're using in the request file. So in this case, we're going to be using the WGS 84, which is just latitude and longitudes. And there's a link dump at the end of this presentation that I can send out to everybody that has all these nice GIS links.
Do you want us to open up, or can you open up the request file just to show us?
Yeah, I'll vim it. But just really quick, this spatialreference.org has all of the projections your heart could ever desire in well-known text format, so that you can use whatever spatial reference system your layers use. So this is what my directory looks like. It's got the 4 files.
That alarm thing is...
Yeah, so this is the occurrences file for frittata-boliviana.txt. This is the request file, and then the 2 layers. So I'll go ahead.
The request here.
Now I'll check out the request. So this is what the request file looks like. It's got an introduction in it. This example one explains a lot of what the parameters are. So if you want to play around with this later, you can just look at this, and it'll give you a pretty good introduction to what all of these different things stand for. So one really neat thing about OpenModeller is that you can have, if you're doing some ecological niche modeling for a number of species, you can have all of the occurrences in the same file. So if you're out in the field and you're just looking for things, you can go and record every different species that you see with a GPS system or something like that, and store it all in the same file. And then as long as you specify which group you're doing this specific model on, it'll filter just those occurrences out and use those for the model. So down here we specify what maps we want to use with the model, what layers we want to feed into this, and also what which one's extent and format we want to follow for our output. So in this case, we'll be using the ring coolest.tiff as the mask, and that just basically says I want you to plot data for the extent of the region that's specified in this file. You can control what kind of statistics you want to get in your output. You should probably not uncomment these unless you know what you're doing, because the model statistics that get output are actually really useful in determining how well your model did. It's got...
Is there a special way we're supposed to download
confusion? Okay, I'll go back. There's a link that says download. So
Can you also just on the SVN or
you could, or you could just click download
yeah.
this file.
Okay.
Just to get specific ones out, because you don't need all of these to get a working example going.
Back, sorry.
Here.
List, yeah.
Yeah.
Request that. Because what I did was I right-clicked. No, it's
Everybody boo John.
SourceBoard just screwed it up. It's got serious issues. I mean, I shouldn't have to double-click or click into the thing. I should just be able to right-click on it.
Is SVN pull an option?
I would assume so. Why wouldn't it be?
Or was asking.
Oh, for him?
No, it's just that when you provide a link to something, you should be able to right-click on it and get it. You shouldn't have to end up with the HTML version of the download page for.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah.
All right.
All right, you're good.
If
Okay.
it's not too far out of your way, could you run file on one of the TIFF files?
Yeah, sure.
So xdg-open,
Are we doing this?
just to see if it is a normal xdg
It's all good.
dash open,
All right.
to see if it is an image.
Nope. So I get this.
Now check recording pattern. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, I think they're GeoTIFF files, which is a little different.
All right. Continue.
Anyways, so to get this working, we're going to run the command omconsole. And I think we can use a support vector machine algorithm first, since that's probably the one that's people would be most familiar with out of the list of algorithms that are available. And I'll show you how to see which algorithms are available later on. But for right now, we're just going to go to the directory that contains those files, and we're going to type in om_console and then request.txt. And you just run this, and you should get something that asks you for which algorithm you want to run, and we're going to try 16, which is the support vector model. And now we're just going to keep hitting enter to use all of the default values at first. Then you should get this output that shows that it's generating the model. Although mine appears to have frozen unexpectedly, of course.
Pseudo advances. Done. Yours isn't done.
No, yeah, mine. Well, I'm running a lot of things on my computer right now. There we go. All right, so now if you do an ls in that directory, you'll see that you have two new files. One of them being this frittata.xml. That's your model, and it shows you how the support vector machine got generated and various statistics to see how the model did. And then the output that we're going to be really interested in is this frittata.image. That's a raster file. Raster is just a form of geospatial file that stores data.
So the XML file contains a ton of XY data.
Right. So the most interesting part is, so these points here, this is the occurrences, and it shows you what sample they belong to. So this is algorithm-specific stuff. So if you go to the bottom, you'll always get this, unless you uncommented one of those lines in the request file, you'll always get this statistics tag with a confusion matrix that gets calculated. So this time around, we actually did, wow, that's much better than it did the first time that I ran this algorithm. 90% accuracy.
So we're not sending your, when you go to terminal, we're not showing you.
Oh, yeah. I guess I have to change it every time.
Well, annoying. I'm wondering if I could have maybe I could I'll figure out how to screen share my terminal window.
Okay.
Or one or the other. Yeah.
Sure.
Well, I can do that.
For the people in the room. So it shows an accuracy here and shows how many true positives and false positives we got in the model. So 90% accuracy is actually pretty good. And we have something that we can use now. We have this frittata.img.
What type of accuracy is that? Like, how is that calculated?
So I think that's also. I think what it does is it divides the occurrences into test.
Training and test.
Yeah, training and
okay.
test.
Just
and
like
then
cross-validation or something?
Right.
Okay.
Yep. So we've got these files, and now we want to be able to visualize them nicely. So if I go back to my slides here. Did everybody successfully run that request? Cool. Yeah, my computer is slowly dying from all of these tabs. Google Chrome eats up so much memory.
You only have 3 tabs open.
Well, I've got another window open, so I'm going to close that. I'm going to close as many things as I can and still maintain the demo. Sorry about this, technical difficulties.
We're literally waiting for your machine?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. It's taken a lot of abuse over the years, so I don't blame it that much. It's not the machine's fault. Come on now.
So what are you about to do?
So I'm going to go to the next slide where I show how we can use a tool called QGIS to visualize the results. But I don't know if we can get there.
I think those in the slides or something.
Yeah, those should be in the slides. So if yours is working faster, I can probably do it from memory. So did everybody get the QGIS installed? That was one of the secondary packages that we can do. If you built your OpenModeller with X11 support, then you can do this thing called OM and I believe the command to visualize your model is OM_viewer-R, and then you feed it the request.txt. And it should, I don't actually know what that does. I haven't built mine with X11 support.
So,
I don't know if you have either, but the people who had downloaded the binaries might have it. So did anybody run that command and get anything? Didn't work? What did it say? Okay.
I got it.
You got it, really?
Yeah. Let me switch to, let me screen share. Let me do that. Let me force it to everyone. So what the world is seeing now is that image of South America with the
Of your audio. So you're on. You want to actually use my machine?
Is your microphone working?
My microphone is now working. I am the.
Okay, so what did you open this with? OM Viewer?
Yeah.
Okay, so in John's
Beautiful.
thing, we can see that it's got a map with different grayscale values with, I believe, darker values up to green, indicating environment suitability, and then the lighter values indicating that the species probably can't live there. But we can get
What does the color indicate?
probability, so like it's a scale, and it'll be more clear if we use QGIS to visualize this output. So for those of you who have QGIS installed, you can open it. I'm going to close this because otherwise it's just going to eat it. Open QGIS desktop.
So I'm going to switch to so people can see that slide. So hold on.
Okay.
I got to find your slides. Where?
I'm sorry that my machine isn't cooperating.
Okay, so now the world is seeing. Which slide do you want them to be on?
11.
Okay, so that's the one that they're seeing.
Okay. So we go to QGIS desktop, and then we can go to layer and add raster layer, or the keyboard shortcut for that is Control-Shift-R. And then we're going to go to our directory that has the ricotta.img. Open that up, and we'll get that nice output that John was showing earlier. But to make it a little bit easier to understand, we're going to go right-click that layer, and go to Properties, and then you should get a screen that pops up like this. And right now it's rendering it as a single-band gray raster file, but we want to use pseudo-color so that we can get a little bit better feel for what's going on.
So this is only people with QGIS, right?
Right, yeah, this is for people with QGIS.
Okay.
And so I like to use this spectral color map, and that should be the default one that pops up. I also like to invert it because, in my mind, using red as indicating a high probability makes more sense. Everything else we're going to leave the same, and we're going to click this Classify button. And that'll give you a range, basically, of probabilities with a color associated to given discrete steps in that range.
Some of the probabilities are slightly higher than one.
So it's not. So it depends on the model. The model assigns a numeric value that's not necessarily in a range of 0 to 102 points, but the higher the value in that range, the more likely the species is to be able to survive.
It corresponds to some kind of monatomic function.
Right. Correct. So once we have this classified, we can hit OK, and it should do something like where it renders the map with these nice colors. And if you click to invert, the closer you are to red, the more likely the species is to be able to survive in that area. And if you did it, then the opposite is true, and the blue areas will be more habitable. So this is a good model. Right around here is where Bolivia actually is. And so the first thing that jumps out at me is that the species that we're examining, the Bolivian, finch or whatever it is only predicted as being moderately able to live in that environment, which seems like maybe we could do better because we know that it does live there. We can maybe try a different kind of algorithm and see if we get better results and that show that this environment around here is more habitable to this species. One nice thing that you can do if you have like really high resolution maps too in QGIS, you can zoom in using your scroll wheel or scroll bar and get more fine grained.
So this doesn't install with. This did install with a modeler install.
No, this is a separate tool.
Okay.
It's saying that it's only only partly probable to succeed in where it actually is. You're seeming to say that's a failure of the model. Is it also valid to assume that, or to interpret the model as saying that it would it's successful, but it would be even more successful over to the southeast of where.
Yeah, that's another possible interpretation of it.
Okay.
And
But given the scale, it's not possible to test experimentally.
right, especially in this specific experiment, right? Because this is a big map. But right, the most useful and most reliable way to validate your models is to go into that XML file that gets generated when you run the model and test the accuracy, or see what accuracy comes up. So this is actually pretty good. We got 90% accuracy, and because I think it uses some random processes when it's generating the model, running it several times and seeing if you get better or worse results each time is going to be necessary because you're going to get slightly different results.
What part of the model is non-deterministic?
So I think well, that depends on the algorithm that you run, but
I was under the impression that SVM was like a completely deterministic.
Maybe in certain applications. I'm not 100% sure about the implementation of it here. So you'd have to know more about each algorithm that you're going to run using this tool. So we're going to go ahead and I'll just show you how to run a different algorithm with this. To do that, you're going to have to remove your results.
So, hold on here. I got to catch up with you because
Sure.
I'm broadcasting.
Sure.
All right. So I need to go to screen share. I need to go back to my terminal.
.xml is the thing created by QGIS.
Yes.
And you render it to color.
Correct.
So I need to close my viewer, right? Okay. Now what am I doing?
So did you load it into QGIS?
No, but I have those result files.
You have this file too? I don't think you should have this file.
So let me see what let's just. So I've got .img.
Right. So you want to remove .img and .xml.
Okay, I have both of those. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think you have this one.
No, I don't have the other one.
Right.
Yeah,
So that's something generated by QGIS.
So I want to remove .img. I want to remove .xml. That's it. I got those two gone. Okay.
So one of the more famous algorithms that is used with the OpenModeller, the one that sort of started everything, is the genetic algorithm for rule set production, or GARP. And that was used to model invasive species in the Great Lakes. There was a famous paper that came out from that used ecological niche modeling to predict invasive species distribution in each of the Great Lakes. So we're going to run omconsole with the same request file, except this time we're going to select 10 as our algorithm. Option 10.
So option 10 comes up first. So okay.
And then we're just going to use the default values again.
What's the difference between the 4 different variants of GARP that are there?
So this is it explains it a little bit in the description here. So this is desktop GARP for a single run. This uses best subsets. This uses this is a newer implementation, and this is the best subsets. That's also a newer implementation.
So we're just hitting enter on.
Yeah, we're just going to hit enter to use the default values here.
And eventually it auto creation.
So this one is a little slower. It's a more computationally intensive run.
Is there a way to set the algorithm and parameter values directly from some input file?
You can set them in the request file.
I'm ahead.
Okay.
I'm ahead.
And
We're neck and neck.
What's that?
Any parameters that are unfixed in the input file
Will be
are
asked
asked for
for.
standard input?
Are you running 64-bit or?
No, 32.
Yeah. I'm running 32 also. But it thinks it's got 8 cores. Which probably just means it's confused. We're about
Why
this.
would that be a contradiction?
But
Having 8 or 32 bit? Is there some bit of
No,
code
no.
that I'm missing?
no,
Or it's just the processor doesn't actually have that?
no, you're listening to a person with serious oral diarrhea. All right, so
So this is
should I pop
something
that?
like the map that we got.
So
No, sorry. Yeah, you're doing the screen sharing, aren't you?
right, and so the model creation is going to get done, and then I want to display. Should I just do that viewer again? Okay, so it's done.
Did you do QGIS? Have you downloaded QGIS?
No, but I have that other viewer. I don't know. I didn't do the. I don't think I didn't know that it was the other step about downloading QGIS.
It was an optional step. You don't. It wasn't
Okay.
necessary unless you wanted to look at it in these pretty colors.
Is it easier to do or do it? Is it that's?
It's an apt get.
Oh,
So
okay.
you can do it through. We don't have to get QGIS.
Yeah, hold on. Let's just do it right now. What is it and what's the name?
QGIS. I don't know if that's the
Q.
official package name, but search that.
Oh, there's another way to do it. If I try invoking it, it'll say. Is it capital Q?
It's all caps, yeah.
Q G I S. Let's see what.
There might be like QGIS. Actually,
To do cache search.
right. Or you can do it through the graphical.
How about if I do just.
Command line.
Anyways, checking the accuracy in that one file. When I initially ran this was a model that was produced with probably about 80% accuracy. And I better. So this is what we'll get with using the GARP algorithm. And we see this is basically the country of Bolivia right here, and it's indicating that this has really high suitability for the species, which is nice because we know that it can live there. So I tend to think that that's more reliable, although as you say, it's not necessarily indicative of the model accuracy because it could just mean that some other part of the country is even more suitable for the species and it didn't get there for whatever reason. But at least that first time that I ran it, it gave me better accuracy than the support vector model. And we can check that it did here by looking at our...
It says 89. The SVM headline.
Yeah, accuracy. So it's about the same this time around.
So the world is watching me install QGIS right now.
The world. So yeah, we got 89% accuracy with...
It's pretty.
It's basically the exact same this time around. So then if we do the same thing where we import it into QGIS.
Can you go back there and show me what you just.
I don't know. Did I do anything?
How did you go into QGIS? Oh, you've got QGIS running and you're just going to read in the result.
To use, yeah, you didn't have QGIS the
Yeah.
first time around. So if you open it up after it installs, you're not there yet.
Close.
Okay. Control-Shift-R is the shortcut that you want to use, and then it'll pop up with this file browser. And you go to the directory with the .img file.
Okay, and it's the .img that we're doing?
Yeah.
We're processing triggers for shared mind info.
So then I'll walk you through this again when you get there. But we repeat the same steps that we had before. Invert it.
Actually, while you're doing that, let me.
And we get the map here. It shows high suitability for the region where it currently lives, and also some pretty high suitability in other areas that seem reasonable. So I think Enrique is probably our geography expert in this range, but this is the heart of that Amazon right here. So that would indicate this is probably working well because knowing the species likes very wet, very hot conditions, that's where you want to be. So everybody got through the model generation pretty well, no problems, and you could visualize it. It's pretty fun to play around with. You can, adjust the parameters, see if you can get better accuracy from different algorithms.
So how do I invoke? It's Q.
So now it should be just in your menu. And under the education tab, you can open QGIS desktop.
Oh, desktop.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, so it's also nice to be able to use an outside tool like this because now if I wanted to, I could import other raster files that have, a similar geographic region, or even completely different. I could even, import a file for
So it's
something
not
else that's
recognizing
in North America.
Will they be overlaid properly in terms of like GPS thing? GPS coordinates?
The coordinates. So my intuition says that they should probably be the same projection, and then they definitely will. But I don't know if QGIS might actually have some internal mechanism that converts between projections as long as it's specified somewhere in this file, like what projection this is.
Is there a way to start to point to the? It's not seeing. It's when I try to open.
So did you hit Control-Shift-R?
No, because I thought that was resume. Hold on. Control. I just did. What I did, I just did an open. Hold on a second. Oops, that's weird.
So just hit Control-Shift-R. No, you don't want to open.
Okay, Control-Shift.
There you go. And now go navigate to the.
Oh, okay. And this one, the image, IMG.
Yeah, that's what you want.
Ew.
Yeah. And then so right-click this.
Okay.
Go to Properties.
Yeah.
And here, go to Single Band Pseudo Color.
Okay.
Now hit Invert over here.
Yeah.
And Classify.
Okay.
And now hit OK. You get a nice, pretty color.
All right. So let me screen share that.
Sure.
Okay.
So I'll move on with the slides if you don't mind. So that's how you.
Is there anything I can do? Is there any others? So it's different than what you saw. There's a color. I guess it's the same. It's just that the colors are coming across just a little bit different.
Probably.
Okay. Okay. Cool. So now I'll go back to your slides.
So there's lots of other things that you can do with OpenModeller. One of the really nice things is you can specify a URL to data sources, and it will automatically, as long as you're pointing to a raster file, it can handle. I think it downloads them to your machine locally and then uses them in the model. There's nothing inherent to many of these algorithms that's biological. So, support vector machines, the genetic algorithm for rule set production, none of those have any sort of biological intuition built into them. And it doesn't care what sort of models or what sort of layers you feed it. So one thing that I would be really interested in, and I don't think I've looked it up and I haven't come across any papers that specifically use OpenModeller to do it, but I'd be interested in modeling other distributions. For example, let's say you have some crime data for a city, and you have various layers that specify, I don't know, like street lighting, area income, area education, that sort of thing. And then you have like occurrences file for a specific crime. You could try to model how that crime might spread across the city, that sort of thing. That's something that I'd be really interested in seeing if I had the time. And like I said, I don't think anybody else has done it, at least in my.
You could test the broken window policy. You know what that is? Mm-hmm. That's it's a philosophy of or strategy of policing. It says, crimes become more prevalent when there's sort of signs of decay, such as broken windows.
Okay.
So by,
if you had data that said, that there were broken windows in the area. You can also use OpenModeller as a service. So if you had a server and you wanted to be able to provide people access to upload their files and perform their own ecological niche models on it, then you can do that. And you can use the APIs, and so integrating it with other applications that you might write.
So does this use external libraries to parse the TIF files?
Yes. Yep.
These are like well-tested things?
Yep. And I'll get into one of the requirements actually for running OpenModeller. I'll get into here in a little bit because you can also use it to use the output programmatically. It's a library called GDA. And then one thing that I'd also be interested in, and Simon's not here anymore, but learning over the algorithms. Coming from a background of working with Watson, Watson works by having a lot of data in memory, and then it uses a bunch of smaller scorers to analyze the data that you get it, which in Watson's case is unstructured, natural language text. And then it learns what sort of situations each scorer performs well in. One thing I'd be interested in, and OpenModeller provides a good amount of individual algorithms for ecological niche modeling, so I'd be interested to see if you couldn't do some learning over which of those algorithms and what sort of parameters produce the best output for individual cases that you're looking at across species, across geographical areas, whatever it might be, because you can essentially just take a Watson approach and treat each of those separate algorithms as a separate scorer. And then over here I have some links to data, and these will also be at the end of the PowerPoint, which I can send out to whoever wants it. But it has some species occurrence data here at Bison, some all sorts of data available through Earth Explorer, which is a USGS thing, and then biological. I think this contains like temperature data and that sort of stuff at biogeo.UC Davis.
On the learning question, how would you propose to combine those results? I mean, I can sort of understand what's parallelizing.
Right, so then it depends on, so you would combine the results by having some sort of mechanism that determines what scenario you're in. So whether that be, recognizing that, I'm doing ecological niche modeling for a lake, then these algorithms work particularly well for modeling species in a lake. Or I'm, it all, to get it to work effectively, you have to be able to break down the scenario somehow by a list of features, right, to go into it. I'm working with land, I'm working with this species, I'm working with this kind of animal, I'm working with prime data, that sort of thing. And then you would have some sort of inference network, either like a Bayesian network or a artificial neural network that takes into account all of the features of the given situation and says, okay, I want to combine, I want to really focus on using, interpreting the results from this algorithm and this algorithm and average them or something, right? Something like that. That's the sort of approach that Watson took.
Yeah. Oh, it's the slide. Let me catch up to you.
So moving on to just how you would use this in a program. This is going to be really brief. But there's this tool called GDAL, which was necessary to be installed if you built from source. And I believe it would, at least part of it would be installed if you used a binary. If you downloaded the binary and ran it on your machine. But, so you have this .img file, and let's say you want to use it in a program. You want to be able to handle that raster data that's getting output and integrate it with your application somehow. Maybe you're building a new visualization tool, or maybe you're building, like me, something that would use the predicted probabilities for given points and do things with them. So GDAL is a collection of tools for handling spatial data. You can use it with C++, Python, and there's also a lot of command line tools that you can use. And there's a tutorial here that shows you how to use it to read in generic raster data, and that's also at the end of the presentation in the link dump. So basically, just walking through this code pretty quick. I don't expect people to duplicate it necessarily, but you just I'll point out the important bits here. So you register your driver for handling the kind of data, and use specified that you might not have noticed, but in the request file that you fed to om_console, you specified that your output format would be byte HFA. And so that's the kind of thing that I'm going to use to read in this file later on, knowing that that's the output. I think also that should be specified in the XML output file.
What is HFA? Is that like a specific XML schema or something?
No, it's a binary format for storing raster data.
Okay.
So
this is the .img output, not the
right,
.img.
right, yeah, we're going to be using the .img output. So you just register the driver, and then you can you have to specify what your origin and what your offset are for each pixel value. So the format here is naturally gridded, I believe, and by specifying how wide each segment of the grid is and where your origin is in the top left-hand corner of your data set. That's how GDAL reads in your data, and also you have to specify the spatial reference system that you're using. But that should be encoded in this .img file that gets output by OpenModeller. And
Next slide.
yeah, next slide.
Okay.
And then basically once you have all of these origin and the lengths of the grid computed, you can read in the data into a two-dimensional NumPy array. In this case, there's also a C++ API, and I'm not exactly sure what data structure that reads it into. But here it's a two-dimensional NumPy array, and this reads in the entire data set at once, this last command, which if you have really large data is not efficient. The tutorial that this comes from shows you also how to read it in more efficiently, block by block. But if you have a lot of memory, it's okay.
Do you know if mmap is memory efficient?
mmap, like the
mmap,
memory
map, not mmap. That's something different.
yeah, that's irrelevant.
If mmapping the file to basically loading it into virtual memory, but I believe that the memory accesses in that still access the disk. Is that I guess provided in the C++ version or something?
I'm not sure. I've never actually used the C++ version. I've only played around with Python very in answer. But once you do this, you have your data basically in a two-dimensional NumPy array, and the value at each location in the array corresponds to the model's prediction for that point, which, as pointed out earlier, isn't exactly a probability in the range of 0 to 100, but it is, depending on the algorithm, higher values indicating higher probability, lower values indicating lower probability. And so now you can do whatever you want with that array. You can iterate through it looking for values, pick out subsets, do some clustering, filter the data you want. Let's say you only want to examine points that have a probability that's, 50% or higher. Yeah, exactly. And for the Jefferson project, so next slide. I use this. I basically perform the procedures in the previous slide and read it into an array, and then I go through and I look for points at some arbitrary cutoff that I decided was high enough to be considered at risk for those specific invasive species that I'm looking at. My interest is in points at risk for invasive species because that's what the Jefferson project cares about a lot. And see what areas in the lake they correspond to and label those areas as at risk if they're above a certain threshold. So here we have some RDF that's describing this area in the lake, cluster 10,004, as at risk for the specific invasive that I was doing the model for. And so now I can use these triples with query language like GeoSparkle, and I can sort of link these areas which don't have any context that's easily understandable by a human, and I can link them to named entities in the lake that do have some sort of, that will provide context for scientists that are really interested in seeing how the invasives might spread through the lake. And now I can, if I'm going out and I'm looking for invasives, I can say, show me all of the clusters nearby that are considered at risk. List all of them that are within a mile that are considered at risk for this invasive. And now I'm going to go out and I'm going to look in all of those spots for this. And
so you're doing your assignment of that at risk for invasive properties based on that kind of arbitrary definition. Yeah. Right. So this is not a property graph with weighted at risk.
Right. So what you could do is you could say, so going back to QGIS, when we did this classification,
I don't have that up anymore, sorry.
I'm just showing it real quick. So see how it comes up with all of these sort of arbitrary values for whatever you could say that it's. You could discretize it into saying, oh, this area is sort of.
You don't happen to have a Lake George map handy, do you?
I do, but I don't want to show it.
Oh.
Because it's technically based on data, and also data that we're not.
You show it.
Yeah. I would if we weren't broadcasting, but
it's like,
maybe for those of you who stay afterwards, I can show you.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't want to. I was told strictly not to share that with people, just because it's sort of.
Sorry, any current funders who are watching.
Sort of sensitive information.
But that's very. Let's not talk about that right now, okay?
Yeah.
I
won't tell you.
Then he'll kill you.
So that's all I had, and that was perfectly an hour, which is kind of.
No, that's excellent. No, I think the punchline, it really is a pretty impressive thing. Is that what you've ultimately done is so you've used this tool and actually kind of a sequence of tools to essentially generate. Well, you've gone from the visual space to the to this information space, and kind of had this arbitrary threshold for determining whether it's invasive or not, which is fine. But you could, if your application required more detailed semantics, you could figure that out.
Right.
But just having an arbitrary cutoff, but then you're able to take that graph representation of that invasiveness, and that can be combined with other, a larger scale knowledge graph of whatever you're trying to do.
Right.
And that is, which is what our contribution to the Jefferson project in part is.
Right.
So that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Sure.
Where is that crime data from?
Oh, I haven't actually tried it with crime data.
Okay.
That's the challenge. That's
my challenge to somebody else that has more time than I do. Because I think it would be really cool to try it with something that's not biological and see what kind of results you get.
Well, I was asking because I did Wiki Crimes.
Hmm.
It's a project from my resume advisor, crime. And anyone can go there and report a crime, him or anyone else that we have now, for example.
Okay.
And we have a pretty good data.
So that was crime.
Wiki Crimes.
Wiki Crimes, right? But that's not just Brazil or whatever.
No, it's from all over the world.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah. And we have official data coming from the agency and such. And we have collaborative data. When people go through there, we report any crimes. So if you want the data, you have time for it.
Yeah.
So does it
that'd be really cool.
Does it matter the so what sort of information would you need as what sort of information do you need in order to feed it? I mean, it's best if,
so that would be, you'd want to determine that with somebody that knew what they were doing, right? You would want to discuss that with a criminology person, somebody that knows, okay, we think these are contributing factors to crime, like poverty, education, if you got data on like population density within a region, maybe that contributes to it. Maybe how many streetlights you have in a specific area contributes to it. So you'd want to get your, in that case especially, you'd probably want to get your hands on as much data as you could. That's awesome that there's all that data for all over the world. You'd probably want to focus it on a specific area that you knew you could get some sort of, you could get a lot of layers for. Somewhere you could go, like Troy, I could go out myself and count the number of streetlights if I was crazy. So maybe start there and build up from there. That's another interesting avenue is trying to. It'd be cool if you could sort of automatically pick out those specific things that you're looking for in a given case based on some sort of text about the field. So if you went on and Google Scholar and you got a bunch of papers on criminology and say, okay, these are the things that we think contribute to high crime rates, then it would be able to sort of like pick out those keywords and say, okay, these are the types of things that you want to look for, and then you could go and look for specific data sources that had.
It could be kind of dangerous, though. I mean,
sure.
Yeah, it probably to do this rigorously, you probably want some front-end statistical modeling to really pin down what you really want to use, and then use that as the basis for your mapping.
Right.
Sort of
So yeah, I don't think you're ever going to eliminate the human from the process, just because you're always going to need somebody that knows what they're talking about. So.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. Is that this could potentially let you, if you're sort of mapping raw data and trying to attribute that to causation or whatever, and you really want to back it up with some statistical modeling.
Right. Yeah, something that's been rigorously experimented.
Yeah.
And is generally accepted by people that know what they're doing. Yeah.
All right. So, any other questions? Marcia, do you have any questions? Is this acceptable?
We got the Marcia stuff. We're good.
That's right. All right. So, if that's it, if there are no more questions.
I guess data about crimes. I think there's an ARCOS group doing some project related to that. I'm not sure the exact details, but I think it's something about like cross-referencing visual statistics on crimes with like relations in social media or something like that. But I'm not sure if their data would be helpful.
Yeah, like I said, this is an avenue that is completely unexplored by me, at least. And as far as I can tell, people do that sort of spatial correlation with crime data. But what's interesting is that nobody's used the OpenModeller tool specifically, and it seems to me to be particularly well suited for that kind of thing. So I'd just be interested to see how it went. And maybe one of these days, I'll look into it. When over spring break, when I'm bored and don't know what to do.
Yeah. All right. So I think that's. All right, and let's end this thing.